have it written. I've been working on it for a couple of years.
Go ahead.
Okay. In northern Poland, there's an area called, well, I think it's called around where your great grandparents lived.
Rosie?
No.
No. Wasn't that your grandma Rose?
Mm-hmm. Grandma Rose.
No. It's called Lomshe.
Okay.
Lomzhe. Some people call it Lomshe. It has 4 different names.
Okay.
The reason it has 4 different names is it's near the northern part of Poland, and part of that was not always Poland.
It was Romania?
Part of it was Romania.
Okay.
Part of it was Russia.
Surprised they did not.
Part of it was Lithuania.
No, because my dad is
Lithuania.
Romanian. So.
Your dad have any of this written down?
No.
Okay.
I asked him
Okay.
where our name came from, and he
So-
said to ask Edith.
Okay. So this was divided. They fought all the time, Lithuania, Russia, so on. And you couldn't. You designated yourself a Jew. You didn't designate yourself a Pole.
Yeah.
Or a Lithuanian. So your grandparents, my father used to say, "Oh, I come from Lomshe." Must have been 2 years old. And I found a copy of the papers that said a woman with a 4-year-old child had come from this region, but it had a different name than Lomshe. Okay? So, I went to Poland this summer. No, it was last summer.
2 summers ago.
No, it was
2013.
13. You're right. Yeah. And I had a Servos conference. I'm going to figure out what this is. So I went to Warsaw, and they have what's called a Jewish presentation center. One guy sits in an office with a yarmulke on, American. And I said to him, I want to straighten this out. I have this letter that shows my grandmother coming, and I want an explanation for it. So he says, well, he told me that sometime it was called one name and one it was called another name. So it really had 4 names, so there was no way of really tracking it down. I'm going to track something down that had over 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And so that's the story. And the bus went from Warsaw through Lomshe.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty area. I wanted to see what it was like 100 years ago. It's grassy. They grow a lot of potatoes there. And didn't look like there were any Jews. Hardly. So that's the story. Now, for over 20 years, Jeremy was after me to make a family history of the Lonovici family.
Who?
That's your side?
Okay. The Lonovici family is your father's family.
Oh. How did it turn to Sommer?
Okay.
Verbal history part 2.
The first time we went to Israel in 1980, I said I should start making a family tree. Now, Grandma Rosie, who you remember,
Yeah.
she had 6 brothers and sisters.
Okay.
Okay, she was one of them. And what happened during World War II was that some of them came to the United States, some went to England.
From Romania?
From Romania,
Yeah.
where they were all from. They were from Moldavia in the bottom, which is near the city of Yas. Y-S-S-Y, I think it's called. So they were farmers. Grandma Rosie, we have pictures, of her with a big face on her shoulder, saying she was very pretty. And she also had a talent for sewing.
Wow.
So when she was 15 in those days, they sent young girls to America so they could get jobs and send them money back. So a cousin, older cousin, his name was, doesn't matter. He was coming to the United States. And he said, I'll take her, put her in a factory. They did. They put her in a factory where she sewed. She had an eye problem.
This is like the late 1800s?
She, like the what?
1800s?
I can't hear you.
Late 1800s.
Yeah, this would have been, no, actually, it wasn't. It was after World War II.
Oh.
Yeah.
That doesn't
But
make
she
sense.
always,
No, that's too late.
Too late. Because
yeah, that's right.
My
You're right, it was too late. Well, she always had a problem with one of her eyes. Never got it resolved. But she had such nimble fingers. Oh my goodness, she was just a very, very good sewer. And so she came to the United States, and I don't know how. They had in those days what were called benevolent societies, and they were societies from different groups of Jews. And I think she must have met Grandpa.
Oh.
No love.
No.
No. And she was the only one of her family from that side of the Litmanovichy. Her father's name was Litmanovichy.
Yeah.
Who was in New York. Well, the war came.
But when was World War One?
20.
No, 30 in the 34.
But Grandpa
35.
was like, wasn't he born in 1920 something? The late 20s?
Yeah.
Okay.
You guys
So,
have the
No,
same
earlier than that.
grandparents?
Grandma Mary was born in 1896.
We have the same great grandparents.
so World War II comes, and I don't know why. Oh yes, Grandpa was in the military, because I have a picture of your uniform. Your grandfather.
Yeah.
And then your grandfather was in the war. He spent time in England. That's what he did. Desk job.
Yeah.
And after the war, he met your grandmother Anita, and two got married. Okay. So in the meantime, I always wondered what happened to all these other Litmanoviches.
Yeah.
How did they get out of the hands of Hitler? Well, one of them, Uncle, he was young at Litman. He was very short because we met him in 1960 and he had a limp. And he was on a troop train going to the gas chamber, and he was so skinny that he slipped out.
Oh my gosh.
And he was taken in by a Polish farmer for over 3 years.
Wow.
after the war, he was able to get in touch with his brothers and sisters. I don't know how. And so it wasn't until 1913 that I said, how'd you guys slip out of the ring? Why weren't you put in the camps? He says, because we had money.
Hmm.
They took their money. You see, when the war started, 1933, in the 1933, the Romanian government was very corrupt.
Yeah.
And so they said, we'd take money for anything. Pay us.
So they pretended.
Pay us for $1,000 a Jew.
Yeah.
So they took the money. And so the Novici family was able to stay there
Wow.
and individually sneak out. One family went to England, and that was that's an interesting story, because that was Wolfgang's family. You know who Wolfgang?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know Wolfgang?
Yeah.
Are
So,
they the ones in Israel now? No,
Mhm.
who's this?
Wolf.
yeah, Wolfgang and Disa
Yeah.
was the youngest one. Disa must have been about 12.
And Jeremy had a relationship with her, right?
Yeah.
Pizza and her kids.
Okay.
So in 1980, when we first met the family, there was David, who lived up in Hadera, that's north of Tel Aviv. There was Disa, who was a younger sister. Okay, they lived in Tel Aviv, and her father was shot in the street.
And their father was Rosie's sister.
He was
Brother.
had a grocery store.
Okay.
And then there was he lives in Hadera, must be in his 90s now.
Amnon?
The one who's Bella's husband, Bella the cook.
Oh,
You went to their house for dinner.
I know. They served. They served us fish head soup,
Ew.
Ew.
and we couldn't have margarine on our bread with the fish head soup because.
Oh no,
And I was going,
kosher.
Great.
how come we couldn't have margarine with fish? What's that have to do with milk and meat? Oh no, that's the rule.
Incredible cook. Oh my God. She had 11 different dishes
Wow.
she made. Bella doesn't eat any of them.
They owned a grocery store, didn't they?
Yeah.
What?
When I was there, they owned a grocery store,
They own a grocery store.
and
Made a
I
very good living.
So those are your
Their
second
son-
cousins? I think so.
second.
Second cousins.
They were my dad's cousins.
Yeah, first cousin.
They would
First
be
cousins.
our father's first cousin.
Yeah.
They had 2 children, Joseph and Judith. And then they lived in Herzliya. They owned a grocery store, made a good living. Then there is, let's see, Littman. The oldest was Lucille, and she and David were very close. They lived next to each other in Hadera.
So they
And
all went to
she
Israel?
died 2 months before we got to Israel the first time. She was the oldest. She was sort of the head of the family.
Yeah.
And so that was a family. There was Lucille, David, the one with the grocery store, and the one that got knocked off by the burglar. That was Disa's family, and Rosie.
Where did the Sommer name come from?
We don't know yet.
We haven't got there yet?
We're not there.
So that was the family.
Yeah.
The family's in their 4th generation now.
Wow. And they all stayed in Europe except for Rosie, who was.
They all were what?
They all stayed in Europe or Israel except for Rosie, right? Yeah. Interesting.
Well,
so Jeremy is
Joe,
with-
I mean her husband, he came over 2 years before she did.
Who? Rosie's husband?
Rosie,
Joe
I'm talking
Sommer.
about Rosie.
Rosie, my great grandma, your grandma.
Yeah.
Is her husband's Joe?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And
He came over a couple of years before she did.
and what was his last name?
What was his name?
What was Grandpa Joe's name before they came over from Europe?
I'm not sure. I don't really know.
But it
No.
probably wasn't Sommer.
I don't think
No,
so.
it was S-O-H-E-M-E-R.
MER.
Oh.
Where
Like
he
Schomer?
came from?
Like Sommer, like it's
S-O-H.
spelled right.
Yeah.
He was a very
S-O-H.
Yeah.
he was a very quiet, closeted person.
Yeah.
I have all this written down.
Yeah. Well, we'll look at it sometime.
Where is it?
Well, I was putting it together, and Jeremy wanted me to buy one of these pretty things where you put it all in. I never did.
Is it on the computer?
It's not yet on the computer. Maybe
Oh,
you,
you
don't
hand
you-
wrote it?
I have it written down.
Wait.
Maybe you could do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, well,
When
do you
that
know
kid-
where it is?
Yeah, of course I know where it is.
Well, where is it?
Well,
It's
in
with
my
the last
on
name.
my desk.
Yeah.
In my computer room, on the right hand side,
All right.
there's a bunch of papers. I began typing it. You know, I wrote it out.
Yeah.
Now, it goes even further
Wow.
because it goes to Grandma Rosie's side, which was Aunt Mildred.
I don't know who that is.
I don't
That
either.
must be
Never heard that
your
name.
great grandma.
Mildred does not sound like a Jewish name. I've
No,
never-
I think it is. That must be your grandma.
Mildred
Your
or
great
Jew?
grandma.
Grandma had a sister,
Oh.
Mildred. Oh, she
Oh.
was the other one. She was the other one. We forgot about
Oh,
Mildred.
so that's your great
Mildred was younger.
So that was Grandma Rosie's sister? Was Mildred?
That was Mildred was the youngest sister
Oh,
of all the
Litvinovich.
Yeah.
That was
of
Grandma's
line.
name. She was Litvinovich.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I knew her brothers.
Yeah.
Her
Yeah.
brothers were Harry and
No, there was no
No.
Harry.
And Joe
Wait a
came
minute.
over from Romania too, right?
And what?
Joe came over from Romania.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. He came from the same town.
And you're Romanian also?
Pardon?
You are Romanian?
well,
Well,
Yeah, my grandparents came from Bucharest.
Okay. Why are you saying well? They're from.
she's American.
No, but I'm like our
Heritage.
descent. Yeah.
Okay. So anyway,
She's American? What are you telling me?
What?
87 years old and I never knew this?
so there's so many points that go off.
Yeah.
you
Lots
know,
of
and
family.
you have to write them down,
Yeah.
otherwise you'll
Well,
forget
you
them.
wrote them down. We can put
And
them in the computer.
Did you, and the ones that became famous, of course, are the
The ones in Israel.
in Israel, right?
Wolfgang and Dietza.
Disa.
They're famous?
Disa
Yeah, they're in the
was a
Philharmonic.
younger than Dad, a couple of years younger, and she decided to become a nurse. So she went to nursing school in Israel, and then she took a master's, and she lived with Grandma Joe and Grandma Rosie in New York for a year, while Grandpa was going back and forth between the Navy. So she got to know him, and they became good friends. She's a nut, though.
There's always
Jeremy
one.
said she's completely wacky.
Yeah. Says Jeremy.
Yeah.
And
And her husband Wolfgang was in the Philharmonic,
Oh, okay.
and both of their children
Yeah.
Now.
are now in the
Yeah.
Philharmonic.
and so she married Wolfgang, and the whole story of Wolfgang is phenomenal story of how he came to the United States when he was 11 years old by himself,
Wow.
and his parents were cast, and with a brother.
So when his daughter, who
over
played it,
here.
what's the daughter that plays in
Yeah.
the Philharmonics? Wolfgang's daughter.
There
What's
were
her?
no 6 daughters. There were
Yeah,
Yeah, son and
Wolfgang's daughter.
Wolf-
6. Oh, there were 6 kings.
No.
Wolfgang's
the
daughter.
kids who are now playing in the Philharmonics now. What are their names? Brother and sister.
Oh, Disa and
No.
Yeah,
Dorit and
Drorit is her name,
yeah.
and his name is.
so when they would come to visit here, Dorit was about
Amnon. Who's Amnon?
That's the father.
father,
No, that's the son.
son Amnon and Dorit.
Those
Amnon?
are the kids.
Right.
They're our
So
age. That play in the
Dorit was
Philharmonics.
little. They stayed here. She must have been about 8 or 10 or something. And every day they'd come back to this room, and he would give her violin lessons, and he'd scream at her. And she would scream right back at him. And for an hour, we'd hear him screaming back and forth. And then later that afternoon, we went down the street, and Sid Simon's wife was a concert piano player and had a Simon grand piano in their living room and played a concert for us with her playing violin.
Anyway, he must have come from a very high-strung German family.
Oh, the dad.
Yeah, he was
Wolfgang.
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 Yeah, when I was in
These-
Israel in 1978, he took me to a concert. I remember because Daniel Barenbaum was the featured soloist, and I got to meet him.
I don't know who that is.
Famous violinist.
So you have this whole side of the family,
Okay.
and
Interesting.
his father
Whose father?
became the very well-known,
Wolfgang's father?
Wolfgang, right?
Oh.
And his son, but very high-strung German family, and Wolfgang, what's his name? Son
Amnon.
is the first violinist. You know what the first violinist means?
Yeah, the
Concert
best.
master.
It
The
doesn't.
best.
It means that he's in charge
Yeah.
Right.
of the first violinist coming in on time. That's all.
It's all.
And Edith's still working. She works as a drug therapist in for a clinic in I think she's my age. Yeah. So this is all written down.
Okay, we'll have to look at it.
You remembered all that.
Thanks, Mom.
And I do remember. If you don't write things down, you don't remember them.
We still don't know where silver came from, huh? Well, we had, because
But I'd like to work with you with the computer.
Did you go to Ellis Island and look up the records?
Couldn't
We
find
can
it.
do it.
Couldn't find them.
I mean, somebody someday